Shabbat Shalom, everyone. We're gathered today on the 15th of the 7th month, which happens to be the first day of the Feast of Tabernacles for us. It lines up with 24th of September, 2025 on the Gregorian calendar. And we'd like to go over some of the scriptures that are applicable for today that we can regard. The first one that we have in mind here is from Leviticus or Wayikra, chapter 23. And it just covers the section applicable for today. Verses 33 through 44. And Yahuah spoke to Moshe, saying, Speak to the children of Yisrael, saying, on the 15th day of this 7th month, is the festival of booths, or Sukkot, for 7 days to Yahuah. On the first day is a set-apart gathering. You do no servile work. For 7 days you bring an offering made by fire to Yahuah. And we no longer bring literal offerings for sacrifice before him. The bulls of our lips, the incense of our prayers, these are what is a pleasing offering to him when we are not walking in any evil. So first we want to get our minds and heart right and then participate. And if you've done things that are wrong, and the Day of Atonement was meant for that. But if you feel like you have a guilty conscience for anything that might have came up after that, heartily repent, pray about it first, make restitution with whoever you offended, then pray for forgiveness, then keep your festival. But you want to do it in the right order that he said to, according to the renewed covenant, right? On the 8th day there shall be a set-apart gathering for you, and you shall bring an offering made by fire to Yahuah. It is a closing festival. You do no servile work. These are the appointed times of Yahuah, which you proclaim as set-apart gatherings, to bring an offering made by fire to Yahuah, a burnt offering and a grain offering, a slaughtering and drink offerings, as commanded for every day, besides the Sabbaths of Yahuah, and besides your gifts, and besides all your vows, and besides all your voluntary offerings which you give to Yahuah. On the 15th day of the 7th month, when you gather in the fruit of the land, observe the festival of Yahuah for 7 days. And notice they call it the festival of Yahuah here. This is in particular mentioned as that, and that title was first given to this festival by our forefather Abraham, as we'll see in just a minute. On the first day is a rest, and on the 8th day a rest. And you shall take for yourselves on the first day of the fruit of good trees, branches of palm trees, twigs of leafy trees, and willows of the stream, and shall rejoice before Yahuah your Elohim for 7 days. And you shall observe it as a festival to Yahuah for 7 days in a year, a law forever in your generations. Meaning it doesn't matter where we are, where we do that. It's meant to be kept. Observe it in the 7th month. Dwell in booths for 7 days. All who are native Yisraeli dwell in booths, so that your generations know that I made the children of Yisrael dwell in booths when I brought them out of the land of Mitzrayim. I am Yahuah, your Elohim. Thus did Moshe speak of the appointed times of Yahuah to the children of Yisrael. And then the next reference here is the first time that this was ever kept in creation. We have this account we have the records of this information in Bereshit or Genesis, but any allusions to the appointed times and how these actually fit with his calendar or festivals was not contained in there anymore. You see it very clearly here in the book of Yobelim, or what they call Jubilees, chapter 16. And this is when the messenger appeared unto Abraham, when he was talking to him and Sarah about the birth of Yitzhak, right? This account parallels the account of the birth of our Mashiach in the book of Luke very closely, which is why I believe that our Mashiach was born on the same day as Yitzhak and the same day as Yahudah, the king, which is the 15th of the third month, the same day his body was born again. This is on the new month of the fourth month we appeared unto Abraham. The messenger speaking to Moshe is the same one who appeared to Abraham, who was called Yahuah, that he saw as a man. Just for context, that it's our Mashiach speaking. It says, at the oak of Mamre, and we talked with him, and we announced to him that a son would be given to him by Sarah, his wife. And Sarah laughed, for she heard that we had spoken these words with Abraham. And we admonished her, and she became afraid, and denied that she had laughed on account of the words. And we told her the name of her son, as his name is ordained and written in the Shamaim tablets, i.e., Yitzhak, where we get the word Isaac, and when you drop that, it's where we get the Sacha, or the Saxons of antiquity and history all the way through to today, where that would be called on a portion of his children, both Jacob's name and the names of his fathers, Abraham and Yitzhak. And that when we returned to her at a set time, she would have conceived a son. And in this month, Yahuah executed his judgments on Sodom and Gomorrah and Zeboim and all the region of the Yarden, and he burned them with fire and brimstone, and destroyed them until this day, even as I have declared unto you all their works, that they are wicked and sinners exceedingly, and that they defile themselves and commit fornication in their flesh, and work uncleanness on the earth. And in like manner, Yahuah will execute judgment on the places where they have done according to the uncleanness of the Sodomites, like unto the judgment of Sodom. So he will execute judgment on the places where these things have been done, and you'll notice that there's specific mentions of places that will be destroyed all over the world, and maybe you know why now, right? But there's other reasons that cause it. But the point is, sin leads to ruin, right? That's a universal property, a principle that you can see as a fact in life. It doesn't matter if he burns them with fire quickly, or it's just slow decay, or you have weeds and thistles and problems that you have, or infestation of rats, or whatever problems might come upon you. It doesn't happen without cause. No a curse causeless does not come, right? But Lot we saved, for Yahuah remembered Abraham, and sent him out from the midst of the overthrow. And he and his daughters committed sin upon the earth, such as had not been on the earth since the days of Adam till his time. For the man lay with his daughters. Now, that's saying that was the first instance, meaning that the common myth with Nimrod and his wife isn't really a thing. His wife was not his actual mother. But that's for a different time. I'm not trying to get into that. I'm just trying to point out there's things that we can believe that's common stuff that's taught in the world, and then there's things that his word clearly says that is contrary. So we either let Elohim be true and every man a liar, or not, right? And behold, it was commanded and engraved concerning all his seed on the Shamaim tablets to remove them and root them out. His seed, but specifically the male line, all right? And to execute judgment upon them like the judgment of Sodom, and to leave no seed of the man on the earth on the day of condemnation. The issue of Ruth being a Moabitess that was in the line of Dawid and being a woman is mentioned in Gad the seer, and it's addressed there. But it's an issue it's a principle of the woman's not culpable for the man's problem. That's why our Mashiach came through the seed of the woman, because Adam was cursed from his sin. It caused the fall. And in this month, the fourth month, sorry, Abraham moved from Hebron and departed and dwelt between Kadesh and Shur in the mountains of Gerar. And in the middle of the fifth month, he moved from there and dwelt at the well of the oath. And in the middle of the sixth month, the 15th of the 6th month, Yahuah visited Sarah and did unto her as he had spoken, and she conceived. And she bare a son in the 3rd month, and in the middle of the month, at the time of which Yahuah had spoken to Abraham. So when he spoke to him and gave him the foretelling that was accomplished on the same day, the 15th of the 3rd month, where he said the promise until the time where he would deliver them, and then Moshe was on the mountain on that same day as the fulfillment of it, 430 years later, that's what's being spoken of here. The same day that Yitzhak was born, right? At the time which Yahuah had spoken to Abraham on the festival of the first fruits of the harvest, when they brought in the 2 loaves, right? Yitzhak was born. And Abraham circumcised his son on the 8th day. He was the first that was circumcised according to the covenant which is ordained forever. Now, I don't want to belabor this right now because this isn't the point, but the circumcision is important. It is forever. But to do it right now is to be contrary to his will and word. It's to deny foretellings that have already happened and the literal command not to do so. Anyone could look at Shaul's writings and see that says, look, if I still preached circumcision, why am I being persecuted? He was actively telling the Gentiles that they were not to do that thing to become delivered because it was not the time for it. This was the time where we were out in the wilderness before becoming in, like when Moshe was out in the wilderness and all the men of battle died that were circumcised, but the children were not circumcised, were brought in. That was a type and shadow of the thing to come. And then on the 8th day, reminiscent of the future events fully after the millennial reign, where everything is done and there is no more tears, that's when it's to be fully circumcised and like the messengers where there's no more death or anything like that. It is the full culmination of that circumcision in which we trust, regardless of what your flesh is right now. So we got to stay with all of the words as written, and you can see where it directly says not to circumcise in 4th Ezra, 490 years before he came. It says, and in the 6th year of the 4th week we came to Abraham, to the well of the oath, and we appeared unto him, as we had told Sarah, that we should return to her, and she would have conceived a son. And we returned in the 7th month, and found Sarah with child before us. And we barach him, and we announced to him all the things which had been declared concerning him, that he should not die till he should beget 6 more sons, and they should see them before he died. But that in Yitzhak should his name and seed be called, and that all the seed of his son should be Gentiles, and be reckoned with the Gentiles. But from the sons of Yitzhak, one should become a set apart seed, and should not be reckoned among the Gentiles. For he should become the portion of the Most High, and all his seed had fallen into the possession of Yahuah, that it should be unto Yahuah a people for his possession above all nations, and that it should become a nation and Kohanim, and a set apart nation. And we went our way, and we announced to Sarah all that we had told him, and they both rejoiced with exceeding great joy. Ach Semeach, right? And he built there, so he was given the promise, and the promised seed is now theirs. And then the future of the covenant and the promises and the benefits that were to come of that promised seed that is finally manifest in his life was told to him. And because of these things, that the seed is dwelling with them, he's exceedingly joyful, and they're building this. This is a type of what was to come, where the seed is the word, and this is the promised seed, like our Mashiach was the promised seed, and like Yitzhak was, right? Who was also offered up by the will of his father and willingly submitted to it, type and picture. But right here is the same type and picture of They're rejoicing in their being able to dwell with the promised seed, and now they're building temporary dwelling places to do so. And he built there an altar to Yahuah who had delivered him and who was making him rejoice in the land of his sojourning. And he celebrated a festival of joy in this month 7 days near the altar which he had built at the well of the oath, or Beersheba. And he built booths for himself and for his servants on this festival. And he was the first to celebrate the festival of tabernacles on the earth. And during these 7 days he brought each day to the altar a burnt offering to Yahuah, 2 oxen, 2 rams, 7 sheep, 1 he-goat for a sin offering, that he might atone thereby for himself and for his seed. And as a thank offering, 7 rams, 7 kids, 7 sheep, and 7 he-goats, and their fruit offerings and their drink offerings, and he burnt all the fat thereof on the altar, a chosen offering unto Yahuah for a sweet smelling savor. And morning and evening he burnt fragrant substances, frankincense and galbanum, and stactite, nard, and myrrh, and spice, and costum. All these 7 he offered crushed, mixed together in equal parts pure. And he celebrated this feast during 7 days, rejoicing with all his heart and with all his soul, he and all those who were in his house. And there was no stranger with him, nor any that was uncircumcised. And he barak his Creator, who had created him in his generation, for he had created him according to his good pleasure. For he knew and perceived that from him would arise the plant of righteousness for the eternal generations, and from him a set apart seed, so that it should become like him who made all things. And he barak, or blessed and rejoiced, and he called the name of this festival the festival of Yahuah, a joy acceptable to the Most High Yahuah. And we barak him forever, and all his seed after him throughout all the generations of the earth, because he celebrated this festival in its season, according to the testimony of the Shamayim tablets. Imagine what we get when we do the same things, right? For this reason, it is ordained on the Shamayim tablets concerning Yisrael that they shall celebrate the Feast of Tabernacles 7 days with joy. Ach Sameach, only rejoice, it commands you, right? In the 7th month, acceptable before Yahuah, a statute forever throughout their generations every year. And to this there is no limit of days, for it is ordained forever regarding Yisrael, that they should celebrate it and dwell in booths, and set wreaths upon their heads, and take leafy boughs and willows from the brook. And Abraham took branches of palm trees and the fruit of goodly trees, and every day going round the altar with the branches 7 times in the morning, he praised and gave thanks to Yahuah his Elohim for all things in joy. Right? And that's the intention of what we're supposed to do with these branches that we get. Right here is the second time that we see the fulfillment where the last great day is added. And the beginnings of this was kept in the time of Abraham, which is the time of the first covenant believers, the sojourning of the children in Egypt, and they're coming out before going into the land proper, right? But there's a picture in the things that he did, just like there's a picture in what Yitzhak did while in the land, and then Yaakov, where he goes outside of it to obtain a wife and possessions and children before coming back with them. This is when he comes back, where Louis is made Kohen, Yahudah is made king, and it's like the return before the millennial reign in a fuller type, especially when you know the parables of what's involved here, because our Mashiach came like the type of Yaakov, where he came to find his sheep. But anyways, it says, and he abode that night at Bethel, and Louis dreamed that they had ordained and made him the Kohen of the Most High Yahuah, him and his sons forever. And he awoke from his sleep, and Baruch Yahuah, which that dream is in the Testaments of Louis. You can read about it. And Jacob rose early in the morning on the 14th of this month, and he gave a tithe of all that came with him, both of men and cattle, both of gold and every vessel and garment. Yes, he gave tithes of all. And in those days, Rachel, or Rachel, became pregnant with her son Benjamin, and Jacob counted his sons from him upwards, and Louis fell to the portion of Yahuah. And his father clothed him in the garments of the kahuna, or priesthood, and filled his hands. And on the 15th of this month, Louis, brought to the altar 14 oxen from amongst the cattle, and 28 rams, and 49 sheep, and 7 lambs, and 21 kids of the goats as a burnt offering on the altar of sacrifice, well pleasing for a sweet savor before Yahuah. This was his vow, the 10th of all, right? This was his offering in consequence of the vow which he had vowed that he would give a tenth with their fruit offerings and their drink offerings. And when the fire had consumed it, he burnt incense on the fire over the fire, and for a thank offering 2 oxen and 4 rams and 4 sheep and 4 he goats and 2 sheep of a year old and 2 kids of the goats. And thus he did daily for 7 days, so they could eat, right? And he and all his sons and his men and were eating with joy during during 7 days and blessing or giving baracha and thanking Yahuah who had delivered him out of all his tribulation and had given him his vow. And he tithed all the clean animals and made a burnt sacrifice. But the unclean animals he gave to Louis his son, and he gave him all the souls of the men, meaning the tenth of his servants was given as a tithe to be servants unto Louis in his capacity as Kohen, and all the unclean animals were beasts of burden, donkeys and horses and whatnot that were used to for that purpose, right? There was in the translations that you can find there, someone puts in brackets, did not give to his son Louis, but that's not true, right? He was to give him a tenth of everything, and the portion of Yahuah goes to the Kohen. And Louis discharged the Kohen office at Bethel before Yaakov, his father, in preference to his 10 brothers, and he was a Kohen there, and Yaakov gave his vow. Thus he tithed again the tithe to Yahuah, sorry about that, and set it apart, and it became set apart unto him. And for this reason, it is ordained on the Shamayim tablets as a Torah for the tithing again, the tithe to eat before Yahuah from year to year, in the place where it is chosen that his name should dwell. And to this Torah there is no limit of days forever. So wherever his name is meant to dwell, in the instance of today, we are the living dwelling place of Elohim. Where 2 or more are gathered, there he is present with us. We're supposed to be doing these things in every place that we are gathered to. And you have your first tithe, which is meant to be for the service of your assembly, right? For the use of overseers, ministers, deacons, readers, whoever's ministering to you, and then the poor and the widows amongst them. And then the second tithe here is specifically, if you remember, for your keeping your festivals and rejoicing before him. This ordinance is written that it may be fulfilled from year to year in eating the second tithe before Yahuah in the place where it has been chosen, and nothing shall remain over from it from this year to the year following. For in its year shall the seed be eaten till the days of the gathering of the seed of the year, and the wine till the days of the wine, and the oil till the days of its season. This has gone over in other places as well, but basically they would have to eat the old grain until first fruits. When they did the Aviv barley and they waved the first fruits offering on the 26th of the first month, then they could eat the fresh barley grain of the land that year, and they had to abominate whatever they had left over from the year before. They couldn't eat it, couldn't keep it, couldn't sell it. It was gone, garbage. And that was supposed to teach them not to hoard things and to trust in him, but it's a different thing. Anyways, each one was supposed to be used until it was renewed at its appointed time, and then they would have the new stuff that was provided for that season. And all that is left thereof and becomes old, let it be regarded as polluted. Let it be burnt with fire, for it is unclean. And thus let them eat it together in the sanctuary, and let them not suffer it to become old. And all the tithes of the oxen and sheep shall be kadosh unto Yahuah, and shall belong to his Kohanim, which they will eat before him from year to year. For thus is it ordained and engraved regarding the tithe on the Shamayim tablets. And on the following night, on the 22nd day of this month, Yaakov, and this is important because this is a parable, all right? At this time, full revelation comes at the end of the tabernacling of these times where we're temporarily shekening with him. Just for you get the idea of these parables and what they can mean, right? It says, and Jacob resolved to build that place and to surround the court with a wall and to set it apart and make it kadosh forever for himself and his children after him. And Yahuah appeared to him by night and Baruch him and said to him, your name shall not be called Jacob, but Israel shall they name your name. And this is the second time that he's pronounced this name change to him. The first is also significant, but this is as well. And he said to him again, I am Yahuah who created the Shamayim and the earth, which is our Mashiach, because he did that by the will of his Father. And I will increase you and multiply you exceedingly, and kings shall come forth from you, and they shall judge everywhere, wherever the foot of the sons of men has trodden. And I will give to your seed all the earth which is under Shamayim, and they shall judge all the nations according to their desires. Doesn't mean that they'll do right, but it means that they'll do it according to their desires, which is fulfilled in history. It's literally true. And after that, they shall get possession of the whole earth and inherit it forever. Okay. And he finished speaking with him, and he went up from him, which Yahushua said, no one has ascended or descended from the Shamayim except for the son of Adam. No one has done that except for him. So every instance where you see this happening, it's him, or else you're saying that the one who cannot lie was not speaking the truth, right? That's the only conclusion we can have. But you'll find that every instance where this happens, you'll also find other elements where it proves that it's him. And Jacob looked till he had ascended into Shamayim. And he saw in a vision of the night, and behold, a messenger descended from Shamayim with 7 tablets in his hands, and he gave them to Jacob, and he read them and knew all that was written therein, which would befall him and his sons throughout all the ages. And this is the information that would have been available to the Chaldeans when they were staying true to the laws of the altar and kept it for over 1,000 years. They would have known this information. And he showed him all that was written on the tablets, and said to him, do not build this place, and do not make it an eternal sanctuary, and do not dwell here, for this is not the place. Go to the house of Abraham your father, and dwell with Yitzhak your father until the day of your death, or until the day of the death of your father. For in Mitzrayim you shall die in Shalom. So see, he knew the day of his death, just like the others were going to know before it happens, but he's told, Keph is told. This is a phenomenon that you'll see more and more, you guys. Um, and in this land you shall be buried with honor in the sepulchre of your fathers, with Abraham and Yitzhak. Fear not, for as you have seen and read it, thus shall it be, or thus shall it all be. And do you write down everything as you have seen and read? And Jacob said, Yahuah, how can I remember all that I have read and seen? And he said to him, I will bring all things to your remembrance. The same thing he said to his taught ones when he was walking in the flesh, and he breathed on them as well. And he went up from him, and he awoke from his sleep, and he remembered everything which he had read and seen, and he wrote down all the words which he had read and seen. And this is how Yahuah appears in dreams and visions. But he also appeared to him face to face, and he saw him as a man speaks to his friend, like he did with his descendant Moshe, right? And he does with those that he calls friends of Elohim, like Abraham and Yitzhak as well. Excuse me. And he celebrated there yet another day, and he set it apart thereon according to all that he set apart on the former days, and called its name Addition. For this day was added to the former days he called the feast. And thus it was manifested that it should be, and it is written on the Shamayim tablets, wherefore it was revealed to him that he should celebrate it and add it to the 7 days of the feast. And its name was called Addition, which they call it Shemini Atzeret, or the last great day now as well, because that it was recorded amongst the days of the feast days, according to the number of the days of the year. And in the night, on the 23rd of this, well, this one's part not really relevant, but Deborah passes away. We don't need to read this part anymore, although everything in here is applicable, it's important, but it's not for today. We want to focus on Sukkot specifically here. So moving on, this section right here is from Devarim, or Deuteronomy 16:13 through 17. It says, perform the festival of Sukkot for 7 days after the ingathering from your threshing floor and from your winepress, and you shall rejoice in your festival, you and your son and your daughter, and your male servant and your female servant, and the Luiim, and the stranger, and the fatherless, and the widow who are within your gates. For 7 days you shall celebrate to Yahuah your Elohim in the place which Yahuah chooses, because Yahuah your Elohim does barak you in all your increase and in all the work of your hands, and you shall be only rejoicing. That's that Ak Sameach, right? 3 times, excuse me, 3 times a year all your males appear before Yahuah your Elohim in the place which he chooses, at the festival of Matzot, at the festival of Shavuot, and at the festival of Sukkot. These two have been fulfilled in their greater fulfillments here, and we are waiting on this one with his return, right? And none should appear before Yahuah empty-handed, but each one with the gift of his hand, according to the barakah of Yahuah your Elohim, which he has given you. And on the 15th day, I'm sorry, this is from Numbers, or the Midbar 29, 12 through 38. Okay, this one goes more into the offerings in the way that the Kohanim are supposed to offer it. It is not applicable in any capacity to us for something we have to do today, but it does have a significance in the animals offered, the amount offered, and the things that you can glean from that. But we'll just read through it. On the 15th day of the seventh month, you have a set apart gathering. You do no servile work, and you shall celebrate a festival to Yahuah 7 days, and you shall bring near an ascending offering, an offering made by fire, a sweet fragrance to Yahuah. 13 young bulls, 2 rams, 14 lambs a year old, perfect ones they are, and their grain offering, fine flour mixed with oil, 3/10 of an ephah for each of the 13 bulls, 2/10 for each of the 2 rams, and 1/10 for each of the 14 lambs, and 1 male goat as a sin offering, besides the continual ascending offering, its grain offering, and its drink offering. On the second day, 12 young bulls, 2 rams, 14 lambs of a year old, perfect ones, and their grain offering and their drink offerings for the bulls, for the rams, and for the lambs by their number. Now, you notice it doesn't repeat itself. More than likely, this was absolutely repetitive, completely redundant with the exact measurement for every day over and over and over again. But to make it easier to write, it was simplified, possibly. I'm not saying that that is for sure, but we have a lot of evidence that we've already covered. You see how much they abridged the book of Exodus and they removed the redundant parts of what Yahuah told Moshe to do, and then they went and did it. They just remove one or the other of those throughout those accounts in what we have in the Bible. But in the Samaritan Pentateuch and the Dead Sea Scrolls, the versions that have not been abridged, you can see the fullness of it. And it's very repetitive, but it goes to instill in you the very thing that he said is exactly what is accomplished. And when you deviate from doing the thing that he said, that causes the problem, right? But it says by their number according to their right or the right ruling, and 1 male goat is a sin offering, besides the continual ascending offering and its grain offering and their drink offerings. And on the third day it's 11, 2, and 14. On the fourth day it's 10, 2, and 14. On the fifth day it's 9, 2, and 14. On the sixth day, it's 8, 2, and 14. And you can see it just keeps descending here. The seventh day is 7, 2, and 14. All right. And then for each one of these days, you also have one goat that's accompanied that would be offered first before you do any of the others. You make propitiation for your sin, right? On the 8th day you have an assembly, you do no servile work, and you shall bring near an ascending offering, an offering made by fire, a sweet fragrance to Yahuah, 1 bull, 1 ram, 7 lambs a year old, perfect ones, their grain offering and their drink offerings for the bull, for the ram, and for the lambs by their number, according to the right ruling, and 1 goat as a sin offering, besides the continual ascending offerings, the morning and evening lambs every day, right? The perpetual ones or continual ones. Its grain offering and its drink offering. All right, and then we have one section here from Devarim chapter 31, where Moshe is commanding them again. And this is where he is in the 11th month in the 40th year of their sojourning, right before he's about to pass away. He's giving them recapitulating the entirety of the Torah to them. Okay. It says, and Moshe commanded them, saying, at the end of 7 years, at the appointed time, the year of release at the festival of Sukkot, when all Yisrael comes to appear before Yahuwah your Elohim in the place which he chooses, read this Torah before all Yisrael in their hearing. So at least once every 7 years, they were supposed to hear the entirety of the Torah. All right. Assemble the people, the men and the women, and the little ones, and your sojourner who is within your gates, so that they hear and so that they learn to fear Yahuah your Elohim, and guard to do all the words of this Torah. And their children, who have not known it, should hear and learn to fear Yahuah your Elohim, as long as you live in the land you are passing over the Yarden to possess. And then here's examples of them keeping the festival. You have it in First Kings here, chapter 8, 1 through, this is verses 1 through 5, and then verses 65 through 66. You can just see that he assembled the people, right, on the first of the seventh month, or for the festival in the seventh month. Sorry about that. And that they took up the ark and they brought it in. They brought in the ark, so they were dwelling with the promised seed in a type and the temporary dwellings at this time. Another picture of what you just saw with the fulfillment in the birth of Yitzhak there, right? And it talks about how they fulfilled and performed the festival there. And then you have, it looks like a few more references. We'll read these. This one is just in the course of events after the Babylonian captivity, which applies more to our times than any other of some of these, other than Jacob's, if you look at the types and pictures and what they're meant to foretell. So it says, and on the second day, this is Nehemiah or Nehemiah 8:13 through 18. And on the second day, the heads of the fathers' houses and all the people, with the Kohanim and Leviim, were gathered to Ezra the scribe, in order to study the words of the Torah. And they found written in the Torah, which Yahuah had commanded by Moshe, that the children of Israel should dwell in booths in the festival of the seventh new month, and that they should announce and proclaim in all their cities and in Yerushalayim, saying, go out to the mountain and bring olive branches, branches of oil trees, and myrtle trees, or myrtle branches, and palm branches, and branches of leafy trees, to make booths, as it is written. So the people went out and brought them and made themselves booths, each one on the roof of his house, and in their courtyards, and in the courtyards of the house of Elohim, and in the open space of the water gate, and in the open space of the gate of Ephraim. So the waters pouring forth in the gate of Ephraim, all foretelling the times after the Babylonian captivity here, where we're supposed to be doing these things. And the entire assembly of those who had come back from the captivity made booths and sat under the booths. Sorry, my mouth is dry. For since the days of Yahushua, the son of Nun, until that day, the children of Israel had not done so, and there was very great rejoicing. And day by day, from the first day until the last day, he read from the book of the Torah of Elohim, and they performed the festival 7 days. And on the 8th day there was an assembly according to the right ruling. All right, then you see another witness of that right here in Ezra. And then right here is a foretelling of the future that we can look forward to, where it's still going to be kept in the millennial reign. This is from Zechariah chapter 14, 16 through 19. And it shall be that all who are left from all the nations which came up against Yerushalayim shall go up from year to bow themselves to the King, Yahuah of hosts, and to celebrate the festival of Sukkot. And it shall be that if any one of the clans of the earth does not come up to Yerushalayim to bow himself to the King, Yahuah of hosts, on them there is to be no rain. And if the clan of Mitzrayim does not come up and enter in, then there is no rain. On them is the plague with which Yahuah plagues the nations who do not come up to celebrate the festival of Sukkot. This is the punishment of Mitzrayim, and the punishment of all the nations that do not come up to celebrate the festival of Sukkot. And that will be during the millennial reign, like we mentioned. That's all that we have for now. If you happen to remember any references uh, from the common scriptures, what we call the Bible, or any of the apocryphal writings that you might want to share, feel free to do so in the comments or whatever. But in the meantime, you all have a great festival ahead, a great week of celebrating Ach Sameach, and we will talk to you next time. Shalom.